Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to TEDxIMT Ghaziabad. I'm Muskan Nautiyal.
I am TEDxIMTGhaziabad.
And we will be your hosts for the evening.
Last year, owing to the second wave of the pandemic that shook our nation, we had to back up from the event. That was unfortunate.
However, we're back now with TEDxIMT Ghaziabad online, where you can have the TEDx experience from the safety and comfort of your homes.
TEDx is a place where thoughts are shared, stereotypes broken, and the ideas are born. And this year, we have taken a theme that we hope will connect in deep with your heart and soul, to push you past your dark times and cherish the light in you. We present to you the theme, Lumos Nox, Light in Darkness.
Let us now embark on this journey where we'll take you through 7 talks from 7 eminent personalities, the 7 stars who are the Lumos Nox. Our first speaker is a renowned Indian para-swimmer. Being a swimming enthusiast since his childhood, the spinal cord injury never got in his way. He fought past it and went on to become a national and international medalist in para-swimming. He's a world record holder and has represented India in the 2018 Asian Para Games. Let us hear the inspiring story of Mr. Mohammad Shams Alam Sheikh.
My name is Mohammad Shams Alam Sheikh. I am an international para swimmer and sports diplomat. Today, I am so thankful to TEDx IMT Ghaziabad for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. My dear friends, today I am going to speak my story on the theme of light in the darkness. We all know there are a lot of struggles, a lot of things. There is a lot of darkness in everyone's lives. But what I believe is that Allah Almighty always gives us the load what we can bear. He says that, and that's what I believe. When I got trouble, disability in 2010, and I was in a big depression, my life came into the darkness. We all can imagine if a guy who is the only guy from his village who relocated from village to Mumbai city just to get the education, and suddenly he's doing well. He's doing everything good in his educational career, even in the sports career and the family. He is about to complete his engineering degree, and in the final years, unfortunately, he is due to failure of surgery, he become chest down paralyzed. We all can imagine the shining dreams of that guy can easily go into the darkness. And that's what happened with me. But that time my mom, she was the beacon. She actually motivated me, and she told me that, Shams, if Allah has closed one door for you, definitely He will open thousands of doors for you. And I believe in that, and I believe in myself. Slowly, I started working. I started going out from my house, meeting people, being an engineer. I never got a job in engineering. I started my career from a BPO just to get into the touch, get into the environment, in the feeling that the people are around with me, and just to gain the confidence that I can do something. I can come out of from my house. Why? Because when in 2012 I got my disability certificate, that certificate says I'm 100% disabled. Can you imagine if someone is writing on your certificate that you are 100% disabled, you won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to even sit on your own. And that's when it challenged you that no matter what happens to you, use the minimum resources what is available and just become what you wanted to be. As very well said by the Mahatma Gandhi ji, be the change you want to see in the world. And nothing is constant in this universe. So that's what I believe. I started going slowly out. I started learning karate. I started learning swimming after my disability and even karate also. Participated in one and another championship, won medal, and become one of the best athletes of the year. All these things happen when I saw that there are a lot of people with disabilities around me, and they don't have any peer mentors who can guide them. Everybody is disturbed in their life. Everybody is going into the darkness. No one is actually feeling alive. They feel that their life is completely dead. Their life is over. And that's when I started using sports as a tool to empower the people with disabilities. I started organizing training camps, organizing various events, and that's how I started giving the platform. I was the first person who actually found Parasports Association Mumbai with others and registered it officially. The main purpose to found that Parasports Association Mumbai is to give a platform to the disabled people around me to showcase their talent and bring glory to themselves and to believe in themselves that they can do anything which is possible for them after the disability also. And that's how I feel happiness when people comes to me and they now approach me from across the world through the social media, through my social media accounts, and they share their thoughts. They ask me that I am going through this kind of spinal cord injury, this is my problem, and XYZ. So when you become a resource person, that means you are showing someone the light in the darkness. And that is what the theme of this talk. And I wanted to share with you, friends. Not here. I started keep going on, and people started approaching me. And there was a time in 2018 when I got to know that I have been selected as one of the best emerging leader in the world by the United States Global Sports Mentoring Program, University of Tennessee. And I've been invited there to get mentorship. And I was mentored by Coach Doc Garner in University of Texas, Arlington. I learned a lot from there, and I presented my action plan to bring accessibility on par through sports. And that is what I am doing. Because when I come to India and I see, when I go around on beaches, in universities, and different sports hostel and sports facilities, I found accessibility is the major issues. And when I talk about accessibility, it does not mean making a ramp or just making something accessible. When we talk about accessibility, it is also implies in education, like how we can give education, accessible education to the people with disabilities. And there are a lot of kinds of disabilities. So these kind of things, we need to always raise our voice, and that's what I'm doing. I'm using these kind of social medias, interviews, and I always talk about these issues. Even in my TEDx talks, I'm just trying to show that how accessibility is important. It is not just for people with disabilities, it is for everyone, because we people are contributing in nation development. If you are using today mobile phone, I'm also using the mobile phone. The same kind of taxes I'm also paying, and people with disability is also paying across the India, across the world. So why don't we get the same kind of welfare treatment? So this is my thing. I believe the change start from us, within us, and I request all of you, I urge all of you, those who are listening to me, that please try to make your houses, individual houses, your workspace, your buildings, your infrastructure, everything, because people may come from all walks of life in your, and they can take service or they can be your service provider. So make your environment and make your houses accessible, make your building complexes accessible, which will help us to feel empowered, and we can go easily anywhere and everywhere. My dear friends, when I talk, there are a lot of difficulties. I remember my early days after my disability, how inaccessibilities causes a lot of injuries to me, bad sores, and many other problems. I remember my days when I used to go to swimming pool, and my nephews used to come, and two people used to come and just uh, help me to get out of from my house to go onto the road and going to the swimming pool. That time I used to feel like if I can get out of from my house, I can easily win the world. So you can imagine how difficult it is. And this is not my problem only. This is the problem of XYZ. There are so many people with disabilities. Millions of people with disabilities are in India. And everyone faces the same kind of issues. I used to live in a dream city called Mumbai, which is one of the biggest city in India. But if you can imagine the inaccessibilities issues, if I am facing in Mumbai, what could be the scenario in rural Indias? I urge everyone, not only government. I know India is the biggest country. We have billions of populations, and there are a lot of issues. And this is just not a responsibility of government, but it is the responsibility of every single individuals to make this society infrastructure accessible for each one of us, and to help and contribute into making this world as a better place for everyone. I just wanted to say, my friends, that how I did, how I am playing my part into breaking the light in the darkness. I use sports as a tool. I organize training camps for people with disabilities. I go in various schools and colleges. I motivate them. I talk with them. I give them the practical example. I play with them and I inspire them. So if I'm using a wheelchair and I can do this, definitely you guys can also do many things that will inspire millions of people across you. I just wanted to end this talk with this share. अंधेरे से लड़ाई का यही अहसन तरीका है. अंधेरे से लड़ाई का यही अहसन तरीका है. तुम्हारी दस्तरी में जो दिया हो वो जला देना. तुम्हारी दस्तरी में जो दिया हो वो जला देना. So friends, just go around, do whatever you can. Even a small thing is the biggest change even a small thing can bring a biggest change in the society. So whatever is possible, whatever is in your hand, just do for the betterment of the society and bring a change bring the light in the darkness. Wishing you all, everyone, thank you for listening to me.
A research analyst in the day and a photographer in the rest of his time. Our next speaker is a person of both national and international recognitions for his work, which revolves around the stories of people and their environment. He is a recipient of the Moscow International Photo Award, the Tokyo International Photo Award, Water Heroes Award by the Government of India, and many more. Please welcome Mr. Jay Thakur.
मुझे ज़िंदगी में हमेशा एक ही चीज़ आगे बढ़ाई है बचपन से ही, वो है कि क्या पता अगले कदम में सुकून मिल जाए, जिसकी मुझे हमेशा से तलाश थी, और शायद ज़िंदगी भी इसी का नाम है। इस मौके पे ये मुझे प्लेटफॉर्म मिला है और मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि कई ऐसी चीज़ें, कई ऐसी हर्डल्स और कई ऐसी कहानियाँ हैं जो हम अपने से भी बात नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन कभी अकेले में बैठे हैं तो सोचते ज़रूर हैं कि ये कैसे होगा और कैसे इससे निकला जाए। हम बहुत ही लाचार अपने आप को महसूस करते हैं, मैंने भी करा है। कई स्टेजेस हैं लाइफ के, जैसे कि मुझे याद आता है बचपन में, मैं वैसे तो दिल्ली में पिछले 18 साल से रह रहा हूँ, बट बंगाल के उत्तरी इलाके से मैं रहने वाला हूँ। बाबूजी मेरे सरकारी नौकरी में थे और मेरी पढ़ाई आर्मी स्कूल से हुई है। और एक ऐसी चीज़ थी कि मुझे हमेशा से स्कूल जाना बहुत पसंद था, पढ़ाई करना बहुत पसंद था और नए-नए लोगों से बात करना बहुत पसंद था। बट घर का माहौल थोड़ा-सा अलग था, क्योंकि मैं बहुत ही ऑर्थोडॉक्स बिहारी फैमिली से आता हूँ और वहाँ पे काफ़ी ऐसी रूढ़िवादी सोच भी थी, जिससे मैं हमेशा भागता रहा हूँ। और शायद इसी वजह से मुझे ऐसा महसूस होता था कि घर में मैं ज़्यादा कनेक्शन नहीं बना पाया अपने परिवार से, और तकलीफ़ भी है कि शायद मैं खुद से भी ट्राई करता तो हो सकता था। बट प्रॉब्लम वहाँ नहीं थी, प्रॉब्लम मुझे सबसे बड़ी ये थी कि मेरे जो डार्क कॉम्प्लेक्शन था, मैं बचपन से ही उस चीज़ को लेके काफ़ी कॉम्प्लेक्स फ़ील करता था, क्योंकि घर में ऐसा माहौल था कि मेरे 4 भाई और भी हैं और रिश्तेदार भी हैं, और जब भी कहीं भी शादी होती थी तो लोग मजाक में यही कहते थे कि लड़की ढूंढा जाए तो वो जैसे थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा गोरी होनी चाहिए। हालांकि वो मजाक में उस वक्त तो टल जाता था, बट मेरे जहन में हमेशा रहता था कि ऐसा क्यों है। और कुछ हद तक मैंने उससे दोस्ती भी कर ली थी कि चलो भगवान ने मुझे ऐसा बनाया तो ऐसा ही सही, पर मैं बाकी चीज़ों में ऐसा क्या कर सकता हूँ जो मैं ज़िंदगी में आगे बढ़ूँ और अपना नाम खुद से कमाऊँ और लोग वो सब चीज़ें भूल जाएं। और वहीं से शुरुआत हुई मेरी उस पहले आशा की किरण से। मुझे उम्मीद आई वो सारी चीज़ें, और वो उम्मीद देने वाले मेरे टीचर्स थे स्कूल में। मैं पढ़ाई में अच्छा करता चला गया और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा जितने क्लासेस थे, मैं जहाँ तक याद कर पाता हूँ, कम से कम मैंने क्लास 11 तक तो टॉप ही किया है, या फिर फर्स्ट 3 में हमेशा आया हूँ, और बहुत कॉन्फिडेंस मिलता था। मेरे टीचर्स ऐसे थे कि उन्होंने ऐसा फाउंडेशन दिया, मुझे ऐसी शिक्षा दी कि तुम बहुत चीज़ें कर सकते हो। और कई सारे मैंने चीज़ों में पार्टिसिपेट भी करा, जैसे कि ड्राइंग कंपटीशन है, जैसे कि एक्सटेम्पोर हो गए, डिबेट हो गया, स्केचिंग हो गए। उसमें मैंने काफ़ी सारे अवार्ड्स जीते, प्राइजेस जीते, जिसने मुझे मोटिवेट किया कि हाँ, मैं कुछ लाइफ में कर सकता हूँ। सो वो वहाँ से शुरुआत हुई कि मुझ में वो कॉन्फिडेंस धीरे धीरे आने लग गया कि मैं क्या क्या लाइफ में कर सकता हूँ। और जब मैं स्कूल में रहता था, मैं बिल्कुल ही अलग इंसान हुआ करता था, और हमेशा खुश रहता था, हर चीज़ में पार्टिसिपेट जम के करना। बट जहाँ मैं घर में आता था तो चीज़ें बिल्कुल ही अलग होती थी। वो माहौल जैसा आप चाहते हैं वैसा था नहीं। मेरे बाबूजी गाय पालते थे, और हालांकि बहुत अच्छी चीज़ है कि उनको जानवरों से प्यार था। बट दिक्कत की बात ये थी कि जब मैं पढ़ाई के वक्त वो गाय देखने जाओ, या उसे चारा खिलाने जाओ, या दूध निकालने जाओ, तो तकलीफ़ तो कहीं ना कहीं होती थी कि मैं स्कूल में ये कर रहा हूँ और घर में क्या कर रहा हूँ। बट स्थिति ऐसी थी कि करना तो था ही। और वैसे ही मेरे बड़े भैया के एक छोटे से पान की शॉप थी, जहाँ हम कैंटोनमेंट में रहते थे। और स्कूल के बाद कई बार ऐसे होते थे कि उनको कहीं जाना होता था तो मुझे फिर उस टपरी में जाके पान बेचना पड़ता था। और कई वक्त ऐसा आता था कि मैं अकेला सोचता रहता था, यार मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, मुझे ज़िंदगी में ये तो नहीं करना। पर कोई बात नहीं, ये समय है, निकल जाएगा। पर उम्मीद की किरण ये थे कि कम से कम मैं 12th करूं और उसके बाद मुझे बाहर जाऊं मैं कहीं और कुछ अच्छा करूं। क्योंकि मैं थिएटर्स में और राइटिंग में अच्छा था, तो मेरे टीचर्स ने सजेस्ट करा कि तुम थिएटर्स करो, दिल्ली जाओ, वहाँ से पढ़ाई करो। सो पहले मेरी जो उम्मीद की किरण, वो बोलते हैं ना अंधकार में एक छोटी सी लाइट, तो वो जो आशा की किरण थी वो मेरे टीचर ने दिया। और तभी मैंने डिसाइड करा कि नहीं, मुझे यहाँ से निकलना है, कुछ भी हो जाए। फिर ये बात है 18 साल पुरानी, जब मेरी बड़ी दीदी की शादी होने वाली थी और उनकी शादी हुई, हम दार्जिलिंग के थे और शादी हुई बिहार में। तो हमारे में एक रिवाज है कि दीदी से मिलने जाते हैं भाई। तो मेरे बड़े भैया लकीली वो दिल्ली में रहते थे, तो मैंने उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करा कि मुझे दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में एडमिशन चाहिए और वो फॉर्म मैंने भरा और लास्ट कट ऑफ डेट था 22 तारीख का। मैं दीदी से मिलने गया, उनकी शादी हुई थी 18 जून 2004 में। और जब मैं वहाँ पहुँचा, और हमारे में एक रिवाज है कि सबके पैर छूते हैं बच्चे, तो जब मैं वहाँ से निकल रहा था तो मैंने सबके पैर छुए और मात्र मुझे याद है कि 150 रुपये थे मेरे पास और एक छोटा सा सूटकेस था जिसमें कुछ सर्टिफिकेट्स थे मेरे स्कूल के और कुछ मार्कशीट्स थे। तो ये कुछ मेरे जायदाद थे जो मैंने भैया को दिखाया और बोला कि भैया मुझे जाना है आपके साथ दिल्ली, चाहे कुछ भी हो जाए। एंड ही एक्चुअली एक्सेप्टेड दैट रिक्वेस्ट। और भैया तब भी इस्टेब्लिश थे नहीं, स्ट्रगल ही कर रहे थे। एक फैक्ट्री में, एक टिश्यू पेपर की फैक्ट्री में एक एज अ वर्कर काम कर रहे थे और जहाँ तक मुझे याद है वो 3200 की वेज पे काम कर रहे थे। बट भैया ने ये मेक श्योर करा कि मैं उनके साथ आऊँ। और जब मैं दिल्ली आया तो बिल्कुल ही मेरे लिए बहुत ही अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस था कि यहाँ पे काफ़ी चीज़ें थी करने को। और फिर मैं गया एडमिशन के लिए दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी और वहाँ मेरा एडमिशन हो नहीं पाया। और क्यों नहीं हो पाया? क्योंकि लास्ट कट ऑफ डेट थी 22 जून की और मैं यहाँ पे पहुँचा 23 जून पे। सो मुझसे मिस्टेक हो गया और मैं बहुत ही हेल्पलेस फील कर रहा था तब कि ज़िंदगी मुझे कहाँ लेके जा रही हो, मैं क्या चाह रहा था और क्या हो रहा है मेरे साथ। मैंने भैया से कहा, भैया ने बोला कि कोई बात नहीं, मैं टिकट करवा देता हूँ, तुम वापस चले जाओ। बट कहीं ना कहीं मेरे दिल में ये था कि जो मैं ठान के आया हूँ वो पूरा ना भी हो। मैंने कोई बड़े बड़े सपने नहीं देखे थे, बस ये था कि मैं कुछ ना कुछ जीवन में करना चाहता हूँ। तो उन्हें भैया से फिर से मैंने गुजारिश करी कि भैया मुझे अपने पास रख लो, कुछ भी खिलाओगे, जैसे भी रखोगे मैं रह लूँगा। और मुझे अभी भी याद आता है कि एक जगह थी संगम विहार और वहाँ पे हम 500 रुपए के कमरे में रहते थे और वहाँ कुछ था नहीं, बस एक घर रूम था, एक 10 बाई 10 का और एक छोटी सी खटिया थी और एक कूलर था बस। और 1 साल मैंने वहाँ पे गुजारा है जहाँ पे बिना दोस्त के, बिना टीवी के, बिना किसी के इंटरेक्शंस के। और वो तकलीफ़ होती है सोच के कि वो 1 साल मेरे जीवन ने ऐसा किया मेरे दिमाग पे असर कि यहाँ पे अकेले ही हर चीज़ करना पड़ता है, बट हार नहीं मानना है। और तकलीफ़ एक और चीज़ की भी थी मुझे कि जिस बैकग्राउंड से आ रहा हूँ मैं, किस सोच से आ रहा हूँ और किस घर से आ रहा हूँ। घर पे वहाँ पे मुझे बंगाल में हर चीज़ मिलता था, खाने पीने की चीज़ें हों, कपड़े लत्ते हों, बट यहाँ पे डिफरेंट चीज़ें। भैया फैक्ट्री जाते थे, मुझे खाना बनाना नहीं आता था। और सबसे तकलीफ़ होती थी ये कि उस बिल्डिंग में, उस फ्लोर पे और भी 8 कमरे थे और बाथरूम एक ही हुआ करता था। और जब बाथरूम मुझे क्लीन करना होता था, जब मेरी बारी आती थी, तो बहुत ही तकलीफ़ होता था कि मैं कहाँ पहुँच गया हूँ। अब ना गुज़रने वाली ये ज़िंदगी। अब मैं आज ज़िंदगी में आगे करूँगा क्या? मुझे तो ये तो नहीं करना था। खैर 1 साल तक मैंने ये किया कि अपने आप को बिज़ी रखने के लिए मैंने छोटे-मोटे नौकरी करने लगे। सबसे पहली जॉब मैंने करा सेल्समैन का। मैं संगम विहार से जाता था नेहरू प्लेस से तब ब्लू लाइन चलती थी और वहाँ पे सेल्समैन की नौकरी में मुझे मेंबरशिप कार्ड भेजने थे। तो मैं संगम विहार से नेहरू प्लेस से ब्लू लाइन लेके मैं नोएडा, बघेल तक जाता था। और वो बहुत ही अजीब सिचुएशन था मेरे लिए कि दिल्ली की एक तो जून की गर्मी जो मैंने कभी नहीं देखे थे, पहाड़ों से आने वाला, और दूसरी चीज़ जो मेरे हिंदी बोलने का लहज़ा था और जो मेरे कॉम्प्लेक्शन था, डार्क कॉम्प्लेक्शन, वो एक चैलेंज की तरफ फिर से आया। काफ़ी चीज़ें सुनने मिली बट मैं उसको नकारता गया। मुझे अभी भी याद आता है कि मतलब 8 घंटे 10 घंटे आप काम करो और 100 रुपए के लिए एक कार्ड बेचने पे आपको 100 रुपए मिलते थे और वो भी श्योर नहीं था कि वो मैं आज बेच पाऊँगा या नहीं बेच पाऊँगा। फिर मैंने जैसे तैसे वो वक्त निकाला और मुझे बहुत सारा कॉन्फिडेंस मिला। और ये कर्मा ही कहते हैं ना कि जब मेरी ग्रेजुएशन हुई तो मेरी जो पार्टी हुई वो वही जगह पे हुई जहाँ पे मैं वो कार्ड्स बेचा करता था। खैर 1 साल के बाद मुझे दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में एडमिशन मिल गया। वहाँ से मैंने पॉलिटिकल साइंस ऑनर्स पढ़ाई करी। 3 साल मैंने टॉप किया। बहुत अच्छे दोस्त बनाए, उनसे काफ़ी चीज़ें सीखने मिली। एक एम हुआ ज़िंदगी में कि नहीं, मैं कुछ और बड़ा कर सकता हूँ। कुछ प्लान नहीं किया था कि क्या, बट हाँ, कुछ अच्छा अपने साथ कर सकता हूँ। 3 साल मैंने थिएटर भी करा, काफ़ी एक्सपोज़र मिला वहाँ से मुझे। और वहाँ पे जाके मुझे समझ आया कि एक सिंगल लाइट, एक सिंगल होप और एक सिंगल उम्मीद की किरण होनी लाइफ में हमेशा ज़रूरी है। और कहीं न कहीं वो चीज़ मुझे बचपन में मेरे टीचर से मिली। जब मैं दिल्ली आया तो मेरे भैया ने दी और मैं कॉलेज में आया तो मेरे दोस्तों ने दी। और उसके बाद मैं साथ-साथ में काम भी करने लगा कि मुझे आगे जाके क्या करना है लाइफ में। मैंने पार्ट टाइम जॉब्स करे और वहाँ से जो पैसे इकट्ठे हुए वहाँ से मैंने पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन करा, फिर जॉब करने लगा। और जॉब करते-करते मुझे बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग सी एक बात हुई कि एक बॉलीवुड मूवी आई थी भाग मिल्खा भाग, और उसमें एक छोटा सा रोल था। वहाँ मैंने रोल करा और वहाँ पे जो डायरेक्टर थे उनसे मैंने बात करी कि सर मुझे ये जो डीओपी काम कर रहे हैं मुझे ऐसा कुछ करना है। तो उन्होंने बोला कि बेटा इसके लिए तो तुम्हें फ़ोटोग्राफ़ी सीखनी होगी। और हालाँकि मैं ऑलरेडी जॉब कर रहा था तो मेरे लिए बस एक ही मौका था, वीकेंड। तो वीकेंड पे मैंने एक वर्कशॉप करा और वहाँ से फ़ोटोग्राफ़ी मैंने साथ-साथ करी। और तब से अभी 8 साल हो गए मैं प्रैक्टिस कर रहा हूँ और ऑफ़िस के साथ-साथ फ़ोटोग्राफ़ी भी कर रहा हूँ। और फ़ोटोग्राफ़ी में काफ़ी चैलेंजेस भी आए। मेरे पास इक्विपमेंट नहीं था, पर मैंने पुरानी कंपनी, जब नई कंपनी मैंने जॉइन करी तो पुरानी कंपनी का मैंने पीएफ ब्रेक करा और वहाँ से वो पैसे निकाले और वहाँ से पहला कैमरा खरीदा और मैंने शूट करा। और 3 साल तो ये समझने में निकल गया कि मुझे करना क्या है। और जब मुझे फ़ील हुआ कि नहीं, मुझे ट्रैवल फ़ोटोग्राफ़ी ज़्यादा मतलब ये आता है कि सोसाइटी में क्या हो रहा है, समाज में क्या हो रहा है। सो इस दौरान मुझे अपनी पार्टनर मिली जो आज तक मेरे जीवन में एक सपोर्ट की तरह है। मैं ऑफ़िस जाता हूँ, 30 किलोमीटर 40 किलोमीटर है जो दिन के 4 घंटे खा जाते हैं मेरे। बट तभी भी समहाउ ये मन में है कि नहीं, अभी जीवन में बहुत कुछ करना है। तो सुबह 4 बजे उठ के शूट करना, फिर वहाँ से आके नाश्ता करके तैयार होके फिर ऑफ़िस जाना, फिर रात को 10:30 बजे घर पहुँचना, डिनर करके फिर पढ़ाई करना, देखना कि आज मैंने क्या शूट करा है, आगे लाइफ़ में और कैसे करना है। सो बहुत चीज़ें हैं। और सन 2016 से कुछ नेशनल और इंटरनेशनल अवार्ड्स भी मिलने लग गए। तो वहाँ से एक बहुत ही ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस हुआ कि नहीं, लाइफ में कुछ कर रहा हूँ मैं। और इसी दौरान ऑफ़िस में भी प्रमोशंस हुए। ऑफ़िस में काफ़ी सारे ऐसे फ्रेंड्स, ऐसे कोलीग्स बने जो हमेशा ही सपोर्ट करते हैं कि लाइफ में कुछ अलग कर रहा है तो इसे सपोर्ट करना चाहिए। सो वहाँ पे भी एक उम्मीद की किरण ये है मेरे लिए कि ऑफ़िस में भी सराहा जाता है कि मैं जो कर रहा हूँ। एंड बहुत ही सैटिस्फाइड फ़ील करता हूँ कि मैं कुछ कर रहा हूँ जिससे लोगों को खुशी होती है। किसी को सपोर्ट करना, किसी को कोऑपरेट करना, वो कहीं न कहीं मुझे अपने आप में एक संपूर्ण इंसान के रूप में निखारता जा रहा है, एक स्ट्रॉन्ग इंडिविजुअल बनाता जा रहा है। तो ज़िंदगी से यही सीख मुझे मिल रही है। और जैसा कि मैंने कहा कि फ़ोटोग्राफ़ी मैं कर रहा हूँ और वो भी आपको एक बहुत ही अच्छा इंसान के रूप में निखार के लेके आता है। और इसी दौरान एक जो मैंने काम करा है, चाहे वो एसिड अटैक पे हो और रिवर कंजर्वेशन पे हो, वेब सीरीज़ आई हैं उस पे। और जब वेब सीरीज़ आई तो वो मेरे घर से जब कॉल आया कि बहुत ही अच्छे दिख रहे हो तुम, बहुत हैंडसम दिख रहे हो, तो वो चीज़ भी निकल गई। कि बचपन में जो लोग कहा करते थे कि यार तू ऐसा है या ऐसा कॉम्प्लेक्शन है, तो वो चीज़ भी है। और काफ़ी अच्छा लगता है कि ये चीज़ें हो रही हैं, और ये इसलिए हो रही है कि मेरे मेंटोर हैं, जो मेरे गुरु हैं, उन्होंने एक चीज़ बहुत अच्छी सिखाई है मुझे कि डिफ़िकल्ट सिचुएशंस होती हैं, बट एक छोटा-सा बुखार है, वो आता है और चला जाता है। वो आपके ऊपर डिपेंड करता है कि आप उसे कैसे एक्सेप्ट करते हो, सिचुएशन से कैसे लड़ते हो और आगे बढ़ते रहते हो। और इसी चीज़ से मुझे बहुत अच्छी सीख मिली है कि ज़िंदगी में कभी हार नहीं मानना है। करते जाओ जो मन से करना है आपको। और सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि मुझे ये लगती है कि मैं सामने वाले इंसान को, कोई अजनबी को हँसा सकूँ। और तभी जभी भी मैं किसी की तस्वीर उसे वापस करता हूँ, रिमोट इलाके में कहीं दोबारा जाना होता है, तो मैं तस्वीरें प्रिंट करवा के ले जाता हूँ। और जैसे लोग मुझे गले लगाते हैं, एक अजनबी को गले लगाना, और वो जो फ़ील होती है, उनको जो मैं खुशियाँ बाँट रहा हूँ, वो कहीं न कहीं मुझे भी खुशी प्रदान करती है, कॉन्फिडेंस देती है कि मैं कुछ अच्छा कर रहा हूँ। और इन सब का अगर आप समागम देखें, तो ऐसा लगता है कि मेरी जीवन ना बहुत उतार-चढ़ाव है, लेकिन मेरे हिसाब से ऐसा लग रहा है मुझे हर कदम पे नई सीख मिल रही है और मैं सीखता जा रहा हूँ। तो जीवन का यही शुरुआत है, और यहीं से मेरी जर्नी अभी लग रहा है शुरू हो रही है, अभी तो बहुत कुछ करना है।
Now it's time for a short break before we move on to the next set of speakers. We'll be back soon.
Sadness is part of the human experience, but for centuries there has been vast disagreement over exactly what it is and what, if anything, to do about it. In its simplest terms, sadness is often thought of as the natural reaction to a difficult situation. You feel sad when a friend moves away or when a pet dies. When a friend says, "I'm sad," you often respond by asking, "What happened?" But your assumption that sadness has an external cause outside the self is a relatively new idea. Ancient Greek doctors didn't view sadness that way. They believed it was a dark fluid inside the body. According to their humoral system, the human body and soul were controlled by 4 fluids, known as humors, and their balance directly influenced a person's health and temperament. Melancholia comes from melancholy, the word for black bile, the humor believed to cause sadness. By changing your diet and through medical practices, you could bring your humors into balance. Even though we now know much more about the systems that govern the human body, these Greek ideas about sadness resonate with current views not on the sadness we all occasionally feel, but on clinical depression. Doctors believe that certain kinds of long-term, unexplained emotional states are at least partially related to brain chemistry, the balance of various chemicals present inside the brain. Like the Greek system, changing the balance of these chemicals can deeply alter how we respond to even extremely difficult circumstances. There's also a long tradition of attempting to discern the value of sadness. And in that discussion, you'll find a strong argument that sadness is not only an inevitable part of life, but an essential one. If you've never felt melancholy, you've missed out on part of what it means to be human. Many thinkers contend that melancholy is necessary in gaining wisdom. Robert Burton, born in 1577, spent his life studying the causes and experience of sadness. In his masterpiece, The Anatomy of Melancholy, Burton wrote, "He that increaseth wisdom, increaseth sorrow." The Romantic poets of the early 19th century believed melancholy allows us to more deeply understand other profound emotions like beauty and joy. To understand the sadness of the trees losing their leaves in the fall is to more fully understand the cycle of life that brings flowers in the spring. But wisdom and emotional intelligence seem pretty high on the hierarchy of needs. Does sadness have value on a more basic, tangible, maybe even evolutionary level? Scientists think that crying and feeling withdrawn is what originally helped our ancestors secure social bonds and helped them get the support they needed. Sadness, as opposed to anger or violence, was an expression of suffering that could immediately bring people closer to the suffering person, and this helped both the person and the larger community to thrive. Perhaps sadness helped generate the unity we needed to survive, but many have wondered whether the suffering felt by others is anything like the suffering we experience ourselves. The poet Emily Dickinson wrote, "I measure every grief I meet with narrow, probing eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine, or has an easier size." And in the 20th century, medical anthropologists like Arthur Kleinman gathered evidence from the way people talk about pain to suggest that emotions aren't universal at all, and that culture, particularly the way we use language, can influence how we feel. When we talk about heartbreak, the feeling of brokenness becomes part of our experience. Whereas in a culture that talks about a bruised heart, there actually seems to be a different subjective experience. Some contemporary thinkers aren't interested in sadness's subjectivity versus universality, and would rather use technology to eliminate suffering in all its forms. David Pierce has suggested that genetic engineering and other contemporary processes can not only alter the way humans experience emotional and physical pain, but that world ecosystems ought to be redesigned so that animals don't suffer in the wild. He calls his project paradise engineering. But is there something sad about a world without sadness? Our cavemen ancestors and favorite poets might not want any part of such a paradise. In fact, the only things about sadness that seem universally agreed upon are that it has been felt by most people throughout time, and that for thousands of years, one of the best ways we have to deal with this difficult emotion is to articulate it, to try to express what feels inexpressible. In the words of Emily Dickinson, "Hope is the thing with feathers. that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all.
Our next speaker is someone who's referred to as the teenager who convinced Tata to invest in his startup. He's the founder of the pharmaceutical startup Generic Aadhaar, the aim of which is to provide affordable medicines to people. Let's welcome Mr. Arjun Deshpande.
A saying states that where there is a darkness, there is always a light. You can't discover the light until you find the reason for the darkness. Growing up, I saw how the common man was burdened with paying bills for expensive medicines, and I was determined to change his situation and find the root cause of the problem because I was able to bring a revolution in the pharma industry for the benefit of the common man. I had an effective solution based model for the problem for the millions of the people because as we all know in India, medicines are the necessity and medicines are not the luxury expense. It is a basic necessity of every individual. So hello, I am Arjun Deshpande, founder of India's fastest growing pharma company, which have brought and light over a darkness to the millions across the nation. So I remember the day around 3 years back when I was 16. In one evening, I went to a medical store to buy something. Over that, I found out and I saw one man. He was around an old man. He was around say 60 years or 70 years of age, and he was requesting the medical store owner for giving him some days credit for the month for the medicine bill, and the cost of the medicines was around 25 to 30,000. I wondered as a young kid, what kind of medicines are that which is costing such a high price? So I figured out when I talk and with that old person, Dadaji, he told me that his wife was having a cancer and he was not able to buy the medicines and do the necessary treatment because medicines bills there was a lot of expensive medicines in the country. He was on the verge of crying down. I was feeling very, very uncomfortable because as we all say, India is a pharmacy of the world. So when we say India is a pharmacy of the world, why our Indian people were not getting the medicines at affordable price? That one question arises in my mind, and I figured out that in India there are certain companies who are marketing generic medicines at branded medicines. So that is eventually changing, and it's been the price has been changed 3 to 100 times as well. So how can I bring an solution to the masses by providing affordable medicines? Because when I was having an idea, we have to figure out this kind of thing. So I have to build an entire ecosystem. So I was having an idea. But after the idea, what comes next is an execution. So I always tell that after an idea, in idea, E stands for execution. So if you have an execution in line, you can do things better. So same like me. I figured out if we take the medicines directly from the manufacturing facilities and we give to the end consumer, and with that, if we give the back holding support to the existing medical store. So as we all know in India, there are 10 lakh plus medical stores existing. And today with the online pharmacies coming up and big medical small coming up. So the small retailers, the mom and pop side stores were having huge competition from this kind of competition today. So with our brand today, we are giving them a hand-holding support. With that, we are giving a re-life, a re-backbone to do something innovative. So I always say when you don't have anything to lose, so what is the thing to take the risk? So I always tell that teenage is all full about taking the risk, do something challenging. Because when we do something out of the box, challenging for the masses, that eventually give a big result in future. So be patient, be consistent with your product, with your service. Definitely result will come. Things will innovate in the industry. So same like me, in my first year of time after starting the venture, there were a lot of challenges because many store owners I have to convince at my age of 16 that we can give you a rebranding, we can give you a re-support. With that, we can give up to 80% lesser price as compared to branded counterpart to the end consumer. So this store owner were not convinced with my model because of my age. But I was having a patience to convince them. So I till date remember my first store owner whom I convinced with our franchisee model. They were two brothers and they were running the medical from a decade. So they were doing the traditional way of doing the business, and they were wondering how this teenager can change or help them to grow the profit, grow the sales and the revenues, and eventually to bring more consumer. So when I explained them about the software, about our brand support and all the stuff, they were really impressed. And I told them one important thing, that if anything, if the business goes in loss, so that will affect me. I'm taking the risk. If profit is there, we will be both having the profit, and if the loss is there, the loss is mine. So that kind of attitude when we have at the initial level, be patient, do what you want, and what in your mind, what innovation you have to bring into the world. So from that we started the venture out, and we started increasing the franchisee model. Mouth to mouth publicity was there. Senior citizens were joining hands with generic Aadhaar because we were providing all the medicines under one roof, from diabetic to cancer medicines as well. So we are bringing up to 80% lesser price. If example, one medicine bill is coming around 10,000 rupees, we are giving it around 2,000, 3,000 from the same manufacturer with different brands. So we are focused more on the generic name, the molecule name. So that have bring and you that have played one of the USP in creating our brand at the national level. With the same, today at Generic Aadhaar, we are creating job creators. So when I say we are creating job creators, so from one of our aggregated store, there are minimum 3 to 7 employment generated. So eventually we are creating entrepreneurs. So as I always tell the youth out, that when you're doing something, do for the society from where maximum people can get the benefit out of the thing. So think out of the box, think something that other people are not thinking about, or do something that can that can change the entire ecosystem. So each and every industry have the challenges, problem. So before starting a business, don't just start a business for sake of it. Identify the burning problem, what consumers need on the daily basis, what they are facing on daily basis. On that, you figure out and give a solution based idea to the masses. Eventually your business and your venture will grow. So be a change maker into the industry. Come into the industry with the difference. So don't do that. If XYZ person is doing same, you just don't copy that. You do out of the box and innovation. And with this, never give up attitude is such an important thing. So I meet many people. So if one person told me that he started 3 ventures in just 2 years of time, and he have failed in this 3 ventures. So I told him, if you're not consistent in your venture, if you're not focused on one venture, definitely you'll fail. But you have to be patient for a longer time with one venture. You have to be confident on your product, and you have to pass your message to the masses. You have to make awareness about your product. So don't run here and there what other people are doing. If they are getting success at the initial level, don't run behind the success. You run behind to giving a solution based problem solving product to the consumer. Definitely your consumer base, your venture will grow more. So by saying this, sky is not the limit. Let's not keep this potential to a local or a national level, but to the whole world. With just a single solution, we can bring a light to the lives of millions of people. Be the light for those who have lost in the tunnel. Be a change maker. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is a journalist and a news anchor with 9 years of experience in the field. After working with prestigious media houses like NDTV, CNBC TV18, and NewsX, she now works independently and raises awareness on the social issues and the public policies. Please welcome Ms. Shweta Kothari.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for having me in here today. It's a sheer privilege to be sharing this virtual space with such eminent people. I'm here to really talk about my journey today from a TV journalist to a digital journalist. And it's a very long journey. It spans over 1 decade, and in fact, more than a decade, because it really starts from when I was in school. So, when I was in school, like many young people, I really thought that I'll put the skills that I have to good use. Of the skills that I had, I was good at writing, I was good at speaking, and I thought that I can either be a politician or be a journalist. And obviously, journalism was the better option, the better half between the two. So it wasn't just that, it was also the fact that I, from very start in my life, was very sensitive to things happening around me. I wanted to tell stories of the people. I wanted to give voice to those who cannot have a voice or who do not get a voice of their own, to the unheard, the outcast, the marginalized. And from very early on, having a strong sense of right and wrong, and with the skills that I had, I decided that I will be a journalist. Fast forward a couple of years later, in 2014, I enter mainstream media as a TV news journalist, and things take a turn, but not for good, for worse. A lot of experience comes in the form of reporting and in the form of anchoring and in the form of writing. But there are three really key takeaways under which I can sum up my entire experience of TV journalism in the country today. Number one being, you're not really helping the people. If you are a TV journalist, you're not really helping the people. You're only helping the powerful. When I was a part of the 24/7 news cycle as a TV journalist, we were often running around stories that really did not matter to the people. They had little to no significance in the life of the people. These were stories about either what politicians said, what they were about to do, the elections that are impending, etc., etc. Not much value add really for what the common man is going through. So it dawned on me really early on that you're not really helping the people, something that you're taught, when you're a student of journalism, or something that you tell yourself when you are trying to be a budding journalist, that this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to help the people. You really don't end up doing that. You really don't really end up helping the people. The second learning that dawned on me was that it really doesn't matter what's in public interest as long as it's of the interest to the public. Well, that essentially means that public interest is secondary. Who really cares about COVID, deaths, unemployment, poverty, hunger? Those are not cool issues. The public really doesn't get too excited about it. It's very unlikely for you to be able to sit down with someone and tell them that the country is not doing well economically, that the country is not doing well politically. But it's relatively easy for you to tell someone about a celebrity, about their favorite Bollywood personality, about people they follow, the influencers, their life, their drug habits, etc., etc. So it doesn't really matter if something is in public interest as long as it's of the interest to the public. That will form the agenda of news, and that is essentially what you're going to see on your screens every other day. That's where you draw the boundary, not of public interest, but of interest to the public. And lastly, the third big takeaway that I had was that what public deserves to know is not your call, but that of your editor. What public deserves to know, or what is in, what public deserves to be knowing is not your call. And you may think that the public deserves to know something, but your editor may disagree, and it will really not see the light of the day. And this came in, at a time when I was trying to do some very important stories about cow vigilantes in the country, for that matter. And the story was being reported from a state that my editor at the time thought does not really needs to be told. The story that doesn't really needs to come out from a state that does not need any more public scrutiny. So I remember as a young reporter going to a nearby state, I'll just give you that hint, from Delhi, and I went there and I shot a story about how cow vigilantes were out on streets, and in connivance with the local authorities, they were hitting people on a daily basis. They were standing guards and they were acting de facto police-like, and as an acting police, they were hitting who they had to hit, they were killing the people who had to be killed, and they were literally lynching. And I had that on camera, but my editor at the time decided that no, the public doesn't really deserve to know this. And there was no reason as to why the public doesn't deserve to know this. It was enough that the story should not go out. It was enough to kill the story, and so the story was killed. Those learnings took a time to come their way and to change my course of life in a 360-degree manner. 2019 is the year I remember, February 2019 to be particular. I've had enough by then, and I leave TV for good, as I tell myself. Back then, I'm not sure if I will be back or not, but I leave TV for good and I start my journey as a digital journalist. And in the last 3 years now, since I've been a digital journalist, things have been different. And here are the 3 takeaways that I've had as an independent journalist, as a digital journalist, as someone who now has the power to tell the stories they like. A, it really is important for you as a journalist to be able to hold the powerful accountable. And that power is given to you if you are an independent journalist in the country today. In India, if you are an independent journalist, if you are a digital journalist, you still have the luxury of telling the story as is. You have the luxury of holding the powerful people accountable, of asking them the questions, the right kind of questions, the right manner of questions, and not just those who are at the helm of power, but also those who are in the opposition. Because remember, if the opposition in a country, in a democracy, is not robust, the country is not going to do well. So, the digital journalism that I practice today gives me that opportunity, and that's my big takeaway. Number one is that it's important for you to not think twice before asking questions of the powerful people. It's important for you to not think twice before holding the powerful accountable. But then there are other takeaways, and the most interesting takeaway perhaps is that if it's not interesting to the powerful, and if it's not interesting to the public, it still is a story, right? If it doesn't necessarily have to be an entertainment story. It doesn't necessarily have to be about a politician's son or a Bollywood actor's son or a daughter, about their rave parties, about their drug habit, about their deaths, and about their life. It can be really about the downtrodden. It can be about the marginalized. It can be about that Dalit who was beaten up for his sheer audacity, to sit in front of men of upper caste and eat food in a marriage ceremony. A woman who is outcast because she decides to go against her parents and study, because in her community, women are not allowed to study beyond a certain grade. For that man who gets beaten up on the road because he belongs to a certain marginalized community, right? Where men are beaten up and made to chant Jai Shri Ram in broad daylight, or sing national anthem for that matter in a riot-like situation. So, this journalism that I practice has given me that luxury of telling stories that may not be necessarily interesting, but are in public interest. That may not necessarily be about the powerful people, about the influential people, but really about the people whose stories deserve to be out there. And my third interesting takeaway is that performance is secondary to importance. Often when I was in TV, we would only be chasing stories that would give you TRPs. We would be chasing stories that are likely to make headlines and that other channels are likely to follow. But when you are a part of a digital media scenario, it's not necessary that the story will give you great numbers, that will give you great unique views. But as long as it's important, it deserves to be told. Performance is secondary to importance of a story. To give you an example of a lot of environment journalists in this country who are doing some really great, good work, and they're acting in their best capacity to fulfill their commitment to the environment, the pollution, the industries that are polluting the riverbeds, the industries that are polluting perhaps the air in this country, and despite very, very dire and difficult circumstances, are thriving today with the support of few and very few people in public, because environment stories do not necessarily interest all, and especially not many people that I've come across. So it doesn't really matter if something is popular. It doesn't really matter whether everybody's talking about it. And it doesn't really matter whether you're going to get a lot of audience. As long as you're doing the right kind of journalism, digital media has opened, the independent journalism has opened that avenue for you, because your interest align with the interest of the people and not with the interests of the corporate that fund you. And the reason why all this is happening, if you may ask, is because a lot of independent journalists, as I see today, they are acting in interest of the public without dependency on a big corporate to fund them, without dependency on a big firm to give them money, without dependency on a political party to give them money, and therefore allowing them to do the kind of stories they want to do and allowing them to tell the stories which are important for the people today. All in all, it's been about 3 years that I've been an independent journalist, and there is more that I've done in 3 years than what I've done in the last 5 years before that when I was in TV. I don't know whether I'll be back, and I don't know whether there'll be more platforms that will allow you to do good journalism tomorrow, especially mainstream platforms. And I don't think digital or internet today is less mainstream than TV or media. But I can tell you what's changing. People are learning to trust independent journalists more. People are learning to put their money where the mouth is, and therefore you'll see a lot of independent journalists thriving now with the help of public support, raising funds from their audience, from their viewers. And this is a paradigm shift. This is likely to continue. The only way for the mainstream to perhaps redeem itself is to know that they operate for public. Public doesn't operate for them. And maybe really start taking up responsibility for the content they put out. All in all, I think I'm going to end with a food for thought, and that is, if you are a journalist out of the necessity to tell people stories, if you're a journalist because you think journalism is the fourth pillar of democracy and it's about putting people's voices out there, it's about time you dwell deeper on the stories that you've done in the last few years of your career and ask yourself whether you're doing right by it. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is a hotelier, developer, social entrepreneur, and the founder of the Della Group. He is known for his philanthropic activities for the upliftment of the Parsi community. Let us welcome the visionary, Mr. Jimmy Mistry.
Lumos Nox, light and darkness. My father had taught me something that will stay with me all my life. A negative-minded person always looks for a calamity in every opportunity. And a positive-minded person looks for an opportunity in every calamity. Nothing could be more true for me. I'm a first-generation serial entrepreneur. In 91, I was doing a diploma in mechanical engineering when I realized career is not taking me anywhere, nor is a diploma going to ever secure a job for me. I dropped out of college and started a small pest control company. I had no capital, first generation, middle class Parsi background. Many years later, got into design, manufacturing, imports, projects across the length and breadth of the country. Everything was going well. When in the year 2008-9, recession struck, and a very bad one. That recession gave me a fantastic opportunity to take a step back, pivot. We landed up strategizing and innovating a whole new line of hospitality business. We set up India's first and extreme adventure park. We set up experiential team-based resorts, restaurants, banquets, spas, and we never looked back. Many years later again, come 2020 March, the global pandemic, the entire world coming to a grinding halt. All our 6 resorts had to be shut down. 7 restaurants shut down, 12 banquets shut down. Close to 2,000 group employees, all jobless, standing. Gave me a time and a chance to first, a week or so, get over this jolt, and then pursue something that was brewing at the back of my mind already. Being a first generation entrepreneur, I realized there was a tremendous need for a support system throughout my life and career. Yes, I was lucky and I managed to get, directly or indirectly, God sent angels who became my mentors and guiding lights. Different points in time through my life and career, I had different men who came into my life. Professionally, somebody helped me with the banking facilities, somebody helped me with projects, somebody helped me and guided me with overall brand understanding, and somebody with a deep-rooted knowledge of engineering. But everybody is not as lucky. There is a complete void and a support system. Leaders, they say, are lonely at the top. It is a fact. The biggest of the leaders in the world are lonely at the top. It is this endeavor and this belief and this problem that I thought I should try and solve for the world. It is this endeavor and this thought process and strategy that later, a year and a half later, has allowed us to develop into the world's first business platform. There are platforms and platforms for everything in life, from strategy to execution, leadership, cybersecurity, human resource, on lifestyle, fashion, automobiles, real estate, jewelry, watches, wines, spirits, cigars. There are platforms for everything in life. But when it comes to the world of entrepreneurs, professionals, and young leaders, there isn't a single platform. What do I mean by a platform? It's not a transactional platform where you go and transact business. It's a support system. What does an entrepreneur, professional, or a young leader require? They require constant feeding of knowledge to keep them ahead of the curve. Constant content, not noise. Not frivolous Google knowledge, but business-specific day-to-day decision-making knowledge and content. That is missing. Not available to the world of entrepreneurs, professionals, and young leaders. Apart from knowledge, not just in business, also knowledge in lifestyle. The platform also is required to connect people, a global community, so that your reach to the diaspora and the dynamics becomes very, very different. So something that's global and your first degree connect, something like a LinkedIn on steroids, something that puts you in touch directly with people who matter across in each and every domain. Allowing you the opportunity to meet online, but also have a life and meet offline. Meet all the people across in your city, which we call as a chapter, but meet people in your domain globally once in a year. A global community, a community that believes in social impact. Took the time off, got into research, analyze platforms and platforms across through domains, starting with private clubs and getting my experience. I was invited to be a member of Thought Chambers, and I was very fortunate at that, right in the year 2007. And since then, I've been a member at Chambers continuously. I've enjoyed the privilege of that club and understood the meaning of a high and powerful business club. That's a physical club. Then there are forums across the world, and fantastic organizations like YPO and EO have done amazing work in the world of forums in the last 25 years. Forums are a peer-to-peer networking group that is put together as a support system. It is a game changer. It's like having a personal board of directors in your life. It's a game changer in every professional and entrepreneur's life. I became a part of EO Mumbai, and many, many years later, I have been able to benefit from the fruits of being a part of a forum. I have a fantastic forum and I vouch by it. The game-changing effect it has on your personal, emotional, and family life. Also, when I was talking about a platform where you can have the whole family. Usually, business platforms do not indulge in lifestyle. Lifestyle platforms do not indulge the family together. So one single club that has everything put together is what my heart was craving for as a first-generation serial entrepreneur. I wanted a solution to put all of this and more together so that I would have an answer to everything that I was searching for. A quest would end with this community, which we called as DLC, Della Leaders Club, a global community of entrepreneurs, professionals, and young leaders. Weeks and months of research supported by my family, my kids, my team, right through the entire pandemic. When people were locked up and enjoying life, we were burning the midnight oil and struggling, looking for light in that darkness. Trying to figure out, what do more and more entrepreneurs across the world feel? What is a missing need? What is a gap? And solving the problem on a 360-degree basis. Researching, what do frivolous networking clubs offer? And trying, what is it that we should not do? Trying to stay away from them. Speaking to people. The foundation of DLC was laid on the premise of business, lifestyle, and forums. The rest of the things came in much later. And that was a game changer. Business, creating domain-specific business committees. And in lifestyle, creating domain-specific lifestyle committees. And then in each city, inviting men and women of eminence across to join those committees with their domain expertise. Having a humble request to just spend 8 hours with DLC on a yearly basis. Giving content, helping other entrepreneurs and professionals via their domain expertise. Each of these committees, soon the network effect kicked in. So right from New York to London, Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, Bangkok, Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, Calcutta, Pune, Indore, Ahmedabad. It just spread like fire. And before I realized, I was doing at least 12 to 15 Zoom calls a day with men and women of eminence who had been identified in each of these domains in respective cities across the world. The team grew larger and larger. We started with practically about 8-9 of us working together and moved on. Before we realized, we moved on to more than 55 to 60 people. Today, we are at 180 people as full-time employees in DLC. The 26 committees representing leadership, strategy, human resource, cybersecurity, design thinking, happiness. All of these were not planned on day one, as I'm saying it right now. With each call to a domain expert, talking about a particular genre, suggestions would come in. Where is CSR? Where is philanthropy? Where is education? And we would land up going back to the drawing board, realigning the committees, and taking more and more specialists across on board. Same thing happened in lifestyle. And the more we dwelled into it, the more we realized the fun of doing it. Because there isn't a single lifestyle platform that puts the entire plethora of domains onto one single platform. 13 business committees, 13 lifestyle committees is what we zeroed down on after about 6 months of phone calls. Let me tell you the timeline. Today we are about 18 months down the line from where we started. And the journey is still going on. The learning is still on. Some of the best days of my life was talking to the most amazing people in the world. Our calls took us to deans of universities, ex-dean of Cornell, the current dean of Oxford University, London, industry doyens, leaders, industrialists, technologists, bureaucrats, cybersecurity experts. The list just goes on and on and on. Path-breaking cancer research scientists, people who've established multiple patents in their name. Not just that, the icing on the cake came when the first unicorn founder became a part or honorary committee member of DLC. And then the list grew, and now we have many unicorn founders across as part and parcel of DLC within the 26 domains. Not just unicorn founders, but I think more than 100 plus IITians, Stanford alumni, Harvard alumni, the list just goes on and on. Some of the best management college deans, Thunderbird University, Phoenix, Arizona. The academicians, PhDs, doctorates. Each day when I was talking to these people, I was realizing the kind of passion that they would come with. and passion was common. There were two things that was common between everybody that we spoke to. I personally would have done more than 700 documented video recorded Zoom calls. My team would have done the rest. Today, the global community stands at 2,300 powerful men and women of eminence across the world in these 26 domains. That is the power of the network effect. That's the power of the light in the darkness, the quest that began in May 2020, right in the thick and thin of pandemic. Today, when we are going through the third lockdown, during this time period, a lot has been achieved. The 26 committees allowed us to set up 15 cities. Today, the chapter offices have been set up in New York. Companies have been registered in Singapore, New York, Dubai, and DIFC across the world. So whilst one side we were having meetings with taxation consultants and lawyers to set up this organization, second side we were engaging with people and setting up our studios. DLC, in due course of time, is going to become the world's largest day-to-day business content creator. 26 committees, each committee creating more than 25 content pieces a month. Very meaningful content which goes through a blueprint and a strategy for that particular domain. More than 650 pieces of content a month to be produced across 15 cities in the world. It is going to become the single largest repository. DLC has always been democratic in its nature. It's never been made with an elitist mindset. I realized very early in life, knowledge is meant to be shared. It's not somebody's jagir. The more we share knowledge, the more we get it. So we've resolved to put all these 650 pieces of content a month, every third month, onto YouTube for free, so the poorest of poor in the world can consume, learn, and apply it to their lives. It is our endeavor to make sure we impact the world in the best possible way we can. Via the world of peer-to-peer learning, which is a game changer, having people to go ahead and support us in this entire learning exercise. DLC's vision has been to act as a catalyst to drive people from a life of success to a life of significance. It is in the quest of that significant life where we want to imbibe the discipline of empathy into the soul and DNA of each and every organization and institution that comes as a part and parcel of DLC. Having the ability to have an access to the highest offices across, from the Chief Strategic Advisor to Barack Obama in White House, to the ex-Director of United Nations, to understanding the 17 SDGs of United Nations and creating an entire ecosystem of social impact filled with 54 communities. There is enough and more happening on the world's first business platform. A platform that's meant to impact humanity in more ways than one, serve humanity and serve the planet. There are only two ecosystems that matter. There is no measure of success in DLC's lingo, either with the balance sheet or with personal net worth statements. The only success DLC recognizes within this ecosystem is the number of human lives you've touched. We respect people and put them on a pedestal, high, medium, or low, based on the number of human lives they've touched in their lifetime or the endeavor they're made to do so. Or the actions they have taken in sustainability measures to serve planet Earth. These are the only two currencies that are validated on DLC ecosystem. So there is so much and more that's been put into this platform. Now finally, after 18 months of struggle and work night and day, we've opened up in memberships. Now we are going ahead and recognizing, accessing people across the world. We've been very fortunate to be covered by Forbes New York, Economic Times. More than 400 publications across the world have loved the idea and concept of the world's first business platform. Every city, we've set up our chapter offices to be physically present there. So we can do not just online events, but physical events 3 times a year in every city, known as U-Turn festivals. 19 global summits. There is enough and more in this endeavor and the world known as Della Leaders Club. What matters at the end of the day is how we can remain as a support system, imbibe the discipline of empathy touch as many human lives as we can via the intellect and knowledge of some of the most amazing people in the world. The future plans to expand to the next 15 cities every 6 months. Physically set up studios, offices, people, employees, and again, within the 26 committees, house honorary committee members, and then go for the paid members. It has been an endeavor that has yielded amazing results and inquisitiveness across the world about this platform. We hope we are able to touch as many human lives as we've endeavored to do via the world's first business platform, TLC. I'm happy I've been able to share my ideas of how during the most darkest hour, we ended up creating the world's first business platform and innovating something that didn't exist. I'm happy I got to share my ideas at TEDxIMT Ghaziabad. Thank you.
Now it's time for a short break before we move on to the next set of speakers. We'll be back soon.
In 2007, researchers surveyed over 180 teachers to understand if they held stereotypes about students from 3 racial groups. The results surfaced several negative stereotypes, labeling Black students as aggressive and stubborn, white students as selfish and materialistic, and Asian students as shy and meek. But regardless of the teachers' other biases, the most commonly held opinion was that Asian students were significantly more industrious, intelligent, and gentle than their peers. On the surface, this might seem like a good thing, or at least better than other negative characterizations. But treating the seemingly favorable stereotype as reality can actually cause a surprising amount of harm to those it describes, those it doesn't, and even those who believe it to be true. This image of humble, hardworking Asians is actually well known as the model minority stereotype. Versions of this stereotype emerged in the mid-20th century to describe Chinese Americans. But following World War II, the label became commonly used to claim that Japanese Americans had overcome their mistreatment in U.S. incarceration camps and successfully integrated into American society. Former incarcerees were praised as compliant, diligent, and respectful of authority. In the following decades, model minority became a label for many Asian populations in the U.S. But the truth behind this story of thriving Asian Americans is much more complicated. During World War II, the U.S. government tried to Americanize incarcerated Japanese Americans. They did this through English language classes, patriotic exercises, and lessons on how to behave in white American society. When incarcerees were released, they were instructed to avoid returning to their own communities and cultural practices, and instead integrate into white society. But after decades of anti-Asian policies and propaganda, white Americans had to be persuaded that Japanese Americans were no longer a threat. So the government organized media coverage to transform the public perception of Japanese Americans from suspected traitors to an American success story. In fact, the phrase model minority was coined by one such article from 1966. But this article, and others like it, didn't just cast Asian Americans as an obedient and respectful model minority. They also criticized so-called problem minorities, primarily Black Americans. Politicians who were threatened by the rising civil rights movement used this rhetoric to discredit Black Americans' demands for justice and equality. They presented a fabricated story of Asian American success to paint struggling Black communities as inferior. This narrative put a wedge between Black and Asian Americans. It erased their shared history of fighting oppression alongside other marginalized groups and pit the two communities against each other. In doing so, the model minority myth also enforced a racial hierarchy, with white Americans on top and everyone else underneath. Certainly, many people who still believe the model minority stereotype, either consciously or unconsciously, might not agree with that idea. But comparing the imagined strengths and weaknesses of racial groups places value on how well those groups meet certain standards, typically standards set by a white majority. In this case, the model minority stereotype suggests that marginalized groups who are compliant, gentle, and respectful of white authority are deserving of tolerance, while groups that challenge the status quo are not. This stereotype also negatively impacts the Asian individuals it describes. According to a psychological phenomenon known as stereotype threat, members of a group often place pressure on their individual actions to avoid encouraging negative group stereotypes. But this phenomenon can occur around seemingly positive stereotypes as well. The pressure associated with living up to impossibly high standards can lead to poor performance. And teachers are less likely to notice when Asian students are struggling. Outside the classroom, social programs catering to Asian communities are frequently overlooked or cut because they're assumed to need less support than other disadvantaged groups. The favorable portrait created by this stereotype can also make it harder to recognize racially motivated violence and discrimination against Asian Americans. And since the stereotype carelessly groups all Asians under the same umbrella, it impacts people with various backgrounds and unique histories of discrimination. So while the model minority label might appear to benefit Asian populations at first, In practice, it works like every other racial stereotype. It reduces a group of people to a one-dimensional image. And that single image hinders our ability to understand the history, struggles, and triumphs of the individuals within that group. Acknowledging and challenging these labels is essential for building coalitions across communities and eliminating harmful stereotypes for good. To learn more about the history of World War II's Japanese American incarceration camps, click on the video on the left, or learn how stereotypes can lead to voter suppression with the video on the right.
an MBA from a premium B school to an efficient corporate career, and then to dedicate his life to training and teaching. Our next speaker has found his path to becoming the light of many lives. He is well known for his vision to leave an impact on the individuals and the organizations. Please welcome Mr. Amit Hans.
No, absolutely no. I'm not going to start this with an entertaining joke, nor am I going to ask you to imagine a compelling what if scenario. No enlightening quotes, no mind boggling statistics either. I'm just going to share with you two very simple yet true anecdotes of my life. And then I would leave it up to you whether you can find the much needed light in the darkness of your lives through these stories or not. The common factor between these two anecdotes is my own darkness, my own inferiority complex with which I suffered for the most of my formative years. This inferiority complex was a bit to do with how I looked, very short and, believe it or not, very skinny at that point of time. But it had a lot to do with the fact that I was horribly, horribly scared of talking in English in a society where, unfortunately, people are judged based on their English skills and their intelligence is correlated with English speaking. Anecdote number one. Now, to start with, the basic premise of this anecdote is that I come from an out and out hardcore Hindi medium background, and that too from Haryana, and not Faridabad, Haryana or Gurgaon, Haryana, but Rohtak, Haryana, the god of jats. So I and English are like mechanical engineers and girls. And on top of that, I ended up doing engineering from Hisar, even bigger god of jats, and that too in agricultural engineering. So I hope you can very well imagine that I couldn't be any further away from the English speaking crowd. Now, in the very first year, I realized that I hated my engineering, just like so many engineers in India. And just like most of them, I also did the most obvious. I started preparing for MBA. Now, that's not where the jokes are. The jokes are that I decided to start speaking in English in the hope that someday I would get an interview call. There were four of us, and all four of us decided that we would always talk in English. And if one of us is found talking in Hindi, the remaining three would give one tight slap. So it all started fine until everybody else in the hostel noticed what we were up to. And this is where the fun began for them, not for us. Because in the four of us, they found four guinea pigs on whom they could experiment their sense of humor. And if you are from Haryana or you are aware of Haryanvis, you would know that how caustic our sense of humor is. It's right in the face. So they would not leave any chance to tease us, mock us, and they would not even look at the occasion, the location, the place. They would just start. For example, we are just walking down the corridor and suddenly 2-3 voices would come. English? Or we are entering the mess for our dinner and suddenly 10-15 people, they give us a standing ovation and clap. Manager sahab speaking English. Very soon I realized that something that started off as a friendly banter had started getting on my nerves. I clearly remember this one particular moment when I was surrounded by 6-7 of my seniors and all of them were taunting. English bol ke sunana, English bol ke sunana. And there was something very peculiar in the way they spoke that I was hurt badly. I ran from that place, went back to my room, and I closed myself. And there I cried my eyes out. I burst into tears. I realized that what was my fault? What wrong was I doing if I was trying to work on my weakness? I did not have any answer. But in those moments of pain and despair, I kind of decided that I would stop trying talking in English. But suddenly there was this tiny little thought that came to me and asked me, Amit, what do you think happened out there? Were they having fun at your expense or were they just having fun? The power of this question was way too much for me and I started exploring more. I realized that the more I looked at they were having fun at my expense, the more I felt insulted. But the more I looked at they were just having fun, I felt that I was just incidental to that situation. I just happened to be there. And even if I hadn't been there, those people would still have been enjoying, right? It is not that if I hadn't been there, those people would have been sitting with their heads down, not at all smiling. No. I realized that maybe we humans give a lot of self importance. And in that process, we end up resenting other people having fun. And that is what the cause of misery is. So, therefore, my misery was not because of them, it was because of my own attitude towards people. Over the years, I checked it over and over again, and I realized that every time I felt that somebody was attacking me, I just took a step back and cross checked whether the other person was having fun at my expense or whether the other person was just having fun. I can't tell you how many strong bonds of friendships I have created because of taking time to judge people. Anecdote number 2. Continuing my misery with English speaking, I carried on my preparation with CAT. And no, it's not an inspirational story about how an average student like me, cracked the CAT and made it to the top. No. In fact, it is after I cracked the CAT and got a call from IMT Ahmedabad that I realized that I was scared. Because my first reaction to cracking CAT was, मजाक मजाक में हो गया, but अब interview में English कौन बोलेगा? So many people suggested me to go to Delhi and join a GDPI institute. And the very idea scared me to the core, facing Delhi crowd. But I had to. So I went to Delhi and joined an institute. On the very first day, these people made me sit with 9 other IMT Ahmedabad call getters. So imagine, I, an agriculture engineer, with 9 other IMT Ahmedabad call getters, out of which 8 of them are from one single college, St. Stephen's. I hope you can imagine the fear in me. And they made us sit there, and this is what actually happened. The moment the moderator gave the topic, okay, and the topic was, is India a soft country? I could literally feel it this way, that the topic had not even reached me and suddenly English. And I looked at this guy, what is an English? And I was like, okay, wait, English. And in the first 20 seconds, I heard so much of English that I had not even heard in the last 20 years of my life. I went absolutely numb. That was the time when I realized my career is gone. I am dead. I felt like helplessness personified. For 3-4 minutes, I stayed there dead inside. And if somebody were to ask me that, what is the pain of being in a GD when you are not good at it? Trust me, I know that. Your feet, they become very numb. Your ears become very hot. And there is a weird vacuum that gets created out, around you. And this is what I felt. So I was like, all dead. But suddenly in the 6th moment, there was this one again tiny little thought that came to me and asked me, who do you think you are? Shah Rukh Khan from Dil To Pagal Hai? That suddenly you would catapult onto the stage and create a wow amongst everybody and everybody would start clapping for your performance? And the inner voice in me answered, Aaj to nahi, not today. So it said, so why are you fighting in their battle? They are too good at it. They would win it today. So why don't you redefine the battle and fight with yourself? And that is where I realized that I had 2 choices. Either to fight in their battle and cave in, or to fight with my own previous self, because the winning equation there was just one: speak only one line. I got my answer. But the trouble was that line had to be in English, and I was horribly bad at it. So what I do? I ruffle through the pages of my notes to find out any one line that probably would fit into this situation. I found one, and all I had to do was blurt it out. But I froze again. And this is the time when I had to push myself, and I literally had to tell myself, Amit, bol de. So imagine this funny sequence where everybody is talking with everyone, and I'm talking with myself, bol de, speak up, Amit, bol de, I'm revising that line, and bol de, and suddenly that pressure became so high, and I was like, suddenly, out of nowhere, I said, friends, capitulation to one demand would exert more pressure to bow down to other demands as well. Silence. Everybody looked at me. And in the next second, they were like, pagal hai. And then they continued on their own. But I wasn't, looking at them. I was like, one line in English, bol diya. And it was at that moment that I felt victorious. After the GD moderator, she gave me the feedback, that good, confident voice. But you know what? You need to understand that a GD moves in crust and troughs and crust and troughs, and you need to identify when to enter. So don't enter at the crust, but don't wait for that. And I was like, do you even realize who I am? This is not my battle. My battle was one line, but I did not share it with her, obviously. When I left that room, I felt with a lot of pride. I thumped my chest and like, one line. Next day, I would come back and I would speak one more line. Next day I came, I spoke one line. And I don't know, when did this one line become two lines? Two lines went on to become three lines. Three lines came back to one line, jumped to four lines, came back to two lines. But never even once did it happen that it was 0 lines. And I don't know, really don't know, when did this happen that this guy, who could not speak even a single sentence in English, today gets invited by the IMs and the top corporate to conduct workshops on English communication. Now, why am I sharing these anecdotes with you? Because all my life, I have worked to identify how our brain works, how our mind works. All right, we all know that our brain is a very complex organ, and whatever is fed to it, it processes it, and that's how the perceptions, our reality, our perceptions, our reality takes shape. So I propose a hypothesis based on those two incidents of my life. That is it possible that optimism, positive thinking, confidence, they are not natural trait, but they can actually be developed through deliberate measures. Allow me to explain it with another concept that I learned throughout my study. Okay, this is called the brain theory. According to this theory, our brain is divided into two parts, not the left and the right one, but the new brain and the old brain. The new brain receives the immediate stimuli, for example, sound, sight, and the old brain stores data. And it is identified that when the new brain and the old brain, they work in tandem with each other, your responses are accurate. Okay, your responses are mature. Allow me to give a very simple example. Suppose I take out a pen from my pocket and I show it to you and ask you what is it. You're going to respond, it's a pen, right? So what is happening is that it is the new brain at play that saw the pen and heard the question. But it was the old brain that had the data that it's a pen, and that's how you responded. But it's not actually this simple. Actually, what had happened is that the first time you saw a pen and somebody told you that it was a pen, your old brain stored the data. And over the years, the pen became visible to your new brain over and over again. And it so happened that the connection between the old brain and the new brain became seamless, and so seamless that now you don't even need to think it's a pen. So it's a flash of a second. That's how the pen became your reality. But imagine if I took out something more technical, something more tricky, like a vernier caliper, and ask you what is it. Now you know that your responses would be dependent. They would not be so concrete. If your brain had never seen a vernier caliper, you would not respond. If your brain had seen it, you would respond. But there is one more case. If you had seen it once, long time back, all right, and over time, it did not get visible to your new brain time and again, you would forget about vernier caliper, right? So whether vernier caliper becomes your reality or it doesn't become your reality, it depends upon how many times it becomes visible to your new brain. So the point is, what are you storing in your brains? If the pen is stored, the pen becomes your reality. If the vernier caliper is stored, vernier caliper becomes your reality. If the anger is stored, anger becomes your reality. If resentment, hatred, violence, lack of self-confidence, inferiority complex, these things are stored, obviously they are going to become your reality. It all depends upon how many times are you churning these feelings and bringing them back to your new brain. That's why I suggest people to value the power of their thoughts. Those two thoughts, they taught me something very important for the rest of my life. I realized that when we are in difficult situations, we are flooded with a lot of thoughts. Countless, unchecked, unfiltered thoughts, positive and negative thoughts. But that's not where the problem is. The problem is With what kind of thoughts do we spend more time with? And what kind of reality do we create for ourselves? So, what do I suggest? I suggest that be a little extra conscious about your own thoughts and be on the lookout for all the positive thoughts, especially those little, small, tiny ones that are trying to come to you and are trying to tell you that there is something good in whatever is happening, that you are good, that you can perform good. Every time you're stuck with one such thought, please spend some time with it. Look at it, smile at it, hold it in your hand, and promise yourself to nurture it for the rest of your life. And make sure that you keep bringing these thoughts back to your new brain over and over again so that they keep getting processed. That's how optimism is concretized. That's how positive feelings are concretized. That's how confidence is concretized. Very early in my life, I had heard this very beautiful saying that watch your thoughts, they may become your words. Watch your words, they're going to become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. And watch your habits, because that's you. Thank you so much.
Our last speaker for the evening is best known as the founder of the NGO Prayas, which is dedicated for the welfare, education, and protection of children, youth, and women. He has also been the chairman of the Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights from 2007 to 11. Also an active member of youth-related activities at the UN, UNICEF, and initiatives in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. Let's welcome Mr. Amod Kant.
Today, while speaking to you, I am sitting at a place which I love most. This is one of the 164 centers of Prayas, a girls' home. My daughters, 50 of them, they live here. And then I work from here also. I have a small office here. So this is the best ambience to talk to you. I wish I was in person with you and talk to you in person. COVID times, I'm sorry it's not there. Friends, when I arrive to you, when I'm talking to you, well, I come from two very different directions. See, one direction happens to be my police career. I worked as an IPS officer for nearly 34 years, starting from the position of Assistant Superintendent of Police till DGP Police of Goa and Arunachal Pradesh, one part of it. Alongside, I worked in CBI, did some big cases. I'll talk about it later. I had a very, very eventful career. And this career was violent at times. It was very serious many a times, majority of times. So that is one part of me. Well, it culminated on a very different note when after relieving the service, I was the first chairman of Child Rights for Delhi Commission for Child Rights, which gave me an opportunity to look something from a very different angle. Because the police and the child rights, the police and human rights, they don't go in sync. They appear to be in different tunes altogether. But that was there. So my life appears to be, to me as it appears, maybe to you also it appears, to be a combination of two very, very at times contradictory profiles. Police, as you understand very well, has a different kind of format to work, has different kind of character. And Prayas, the organization which I happened to start while being a policeman in 1988, went along with the police till date, 34 years now in Prayas also. And Prayas is not the only thing which I did in the voluntary sector. Apart from Prayas, there are several other organizations and activities which engaged me all these years. And chance would have it that as Deputy Commissioner of Police Crimes of Delhi in 1988, I started Prayas in one of the most violent decades of Delhi. 1980s was the most violent decade. 1984 riots, assassinations and killings galore, bomb blasts, any number of them. In those times, well, a small problem was there which was troubling me a bit. A lot of children who were homeless, who had no place to go, children who committed small crimes maybe, children who were neglected, not being looked after by anybody, they used to fall in the lap of police officers in Delhi. And since I was in charge of something called Missing and Found Squad of Delhi Police, children being part of it, It was a problem to keep these children somewhere, to look after them for a very small period. That was one part which was my official duty in Delhi Police. And suddenly something more happened. A very small story about it. Well, it was a morning, a Sunday morning, or perhaps a Saturday morning in 1988. The Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, Air Marshal H.L. Kapoor, he calls me up in the morning and tells me that he wants me to come to a slum area or a settlement colony called Jahangirpuri in North Delhi. I said, sir, what's the matter? Why am I being called to be there? He said that there's a big fire. So I said, sir, you can't take the chief fire officer along. Well, no, you are supposed to come with me and come along with me. So I decided, all right. So both of us, the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and myself, we went to Jahangirpuri, a huge slum area with nearly 3 lakh population then, maybe now it's about 5 lakhs. And there was a big fire. Nearly 1,000 houses had got gutted. Maybe 1,000 children also came on the road. When I looked at them and I found that they needed some kind of support. I wasn't very clear what kind of support, but they became homeless, they became destitute, they suffered heavily on account of fire. The Air Marshal thought, the Lieutenant Governor, that I'm trying to say something. And suddenly it occurred to me that why not start a small institution, an organization for children. And that is how Prayas was born, out of fire. In fact, friends, majority of voluntary organizations, majority of those organizations who are in the service of humanity, actually they are created out of some situation. The situation could be a disaster, could be a crisis. And here was a fire which started Prayas. That is one part of it. Now, I carried out both the activities together, the job of my police officer's job on the one hand, and the voluntary action through Prayas on the other hand, for nearly 20 years, as I told you. So it was there something, which is going with me till date, that how two very different types of activities can be brought together. I mean, there could be certain kind of seamlessness, which doesn't appear to be likely, but to me, it appeared to be likely that as a social worker, you perhaps do the same thing, what you do as a police officer. Although I had a hard-hitting career, a lot of violence, a lot of cases, a lot of crimes, but even then I thought that ultimately you work with the people. You work for the people who happen to be somewhere in crisis. And when you work for society also as a social worker, you are also again working for a crisis, disaster, that kind of situation. So there is no big difference between the two. So in a way, in my entire life and career, these two different types of activities, I had a task to combine them and to make a life a seamless affair. So this is something which is very important. Well, since we are on the subject, let me tell you that while I was talking about 1980s, 84 riots took place. People say who looked after and investigated and inquired into the performance of Delhi police and others in 84 riots, that perhaps I succeeded in saving those who became kind of targets of violence in Delhi, as you know, the Sikhs. And then soon after the riots came another phase when a lot of bomb blasts took place. And I had the opportunity to investigate nearly 100 transistor bomb blast cases that took place in Delhi and 5 states of India. That was my kind of role towards investigating the crimes which came as a reprisal of the 84 riots done by the victims of 84 riots. Then, of course, Lalit Makan, Member of Parliament, was killed. Arjun Das, who was very close to Gandhi family, a councillor, was killed. General A.S. Vaidya, who happened to be the chief of army staff, who had not led but supervised the Golden Temple operation. That is, you know it very well about that. So they were all assassinated by the people because the assault, the army assault on Golden Temple had gone into the hearts of people, which led to the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi. And assassination led to all these crimes, all these violence and all these bomb blasts, which I had a chance to investigate. Besides that, since I had opportunity to work as Deputy Commissioner of Police Crime in Delhi for 5 long years, and I was leading the counter-terrorist operations, when I joined CBI in 1991, the first case which came to me was Rajiv Gandhi assassination. The former Prime Minister of India. Something happened in Chennai and something happened in Sri Lanka, and he was assassinated. He was killed by LTT. So because of my experience in the counter-terrorist cases, I was handpicked for that case, and I remained in Chennai for nearly 1 year investigating Rajiv Gandhi case. So that is the kind of cases I did. Subsequently, friends, you would like to know that among important investigations, well, Jessica Lal case, much talked about case, BMW case, Ramesh Sharma case, and the notorious Tihar escape case of Charles Sobraj. All of it I had a chance to investigate in my career in Delhi Police and CBI, etc. Well, recently a book has been published by Bloomsbury, my police memoirs, which is called Khaki in Dusty Storm. The second one is likely to come. So now, of course, this is one part of my life. I do not know what message I am communicating to you by narrating these stories. But the other part of life was the voluntary sector. The voluntary organizations are extremely important for India. This country has a lot of contradictions. Today, when we are there in 2021 and we look at what has been happening recently, perhaps you'd know that nearly 83% of India's population got very, very badly affected on account of COVID. The migrants suffered a lot. You know the stories about the migrants. Majority of population who happen to be not so rich, middle class, lower classes economically, they suffered a lot. That is one part of it. Now I read this story that the number of billionaires in India has astronomically gone up. As against 100 billionaires, today we have got 141 billionaires who became billionaires during the past 1 and 2 years during COVID times. I understand that on the one hand, majority of Indians suffered heavily economically, became poorer than before. The rich became richer. Why it happened, one has to see. And when I work for the people, these kind of people who are deprived and poor, well, I have some interest in their life, and I try to understand what's happening around me. I would like you to understand what's happening around you, because that is how it makes a person to be socially conscious and socially useful. Now, there is something I would like to narrate very briefly about it. When you look at India's socio-economic profile, you find that on the one hand, India happens to be 5th largest economy in the world. Incidentally, India also happens to be 3rd biggest military power. That is one part of it. On the other side, if you look at the poverty and deprivation in this country, well, I think the latest reports are extremely alarming. It's really startling for us that in the latest human development indicators, India's position happens to be 130 or 129 among about 188 countries. Recently, Niti Aayog has a body called CSO Standing Committee, of which I happen to be joint coordinator now. Leading voluntary organizations are members of it. So I fall back on Niti Aayog's reports, which is India's think tank led by the Prime Minister of India. Now, there a report has come that multi-dimensional assessment of poverty indicates that nearly 23% of Indians happen to be below poverty line. In states like Bihar and other states, 50%, more than 50% people, they happen to be below poverty line. So that is one part of it. So human development indicators, the poverty indicators, the hunger index, the latest hunger index says that India's position on the hunger index globally used to be 97 and now it has become 107. It's a very sad situation that a country which is so powerful, a country which happens to be among the world's largest economy, also happens to be among the most poor in the Committee of Nations. So this kind of contradiction, well, I think personally, since I'm trying to understand myself, where do I stand and where do you stand in the given situation, I'd like to further narrate that, well, this contradiction is not something which is unreal. This contradiction is not something which is far away. It is next to you, it is around us, and we should be conscious of it. Now, this is broadly the understanding through which I work and through which I operate, both in the government and outside, wherever I had chance to operate, but more in the social sector and voluntary sector, because India has nearly 3.2 million voluntary organizations, and Prayas, of which I happen to be the founder secretary, working for 34 years now, happen to be maybe amongst leading 200 organizations, because we have nearly 600 professionals working for us. We have 164 centers operating in 10 states of India. So we are there close to close. Nearly 40,000 footprint is there in Prayas every day. So we try to help those people, those women, those children, those youth, those kind of people who are deprived and poor. So that is part of it. So this is a kind of scenario when I am talking to you friends and I am trying to make you understand where do we stand and what exactly we are supposed to do. Well, it occurs to me that if you understand India's developmental process and the sectors under which this country has to operate, on the one hand, you have got the democratic institutions from panchayat to parliament who are very powerful, who happen to be the real masters in the democratic process. Second is India's bureaucracy, which is equally powerful and really controls this country, of which I was a part for nearly 34 years. The third happens to be the market economy, where India has become a very powerful country. And we have got any number of startups, any number of unicorns, brilliant youngsters making big deals. All that is happening on the third side. And the fourth happens to be India's voluntary sector, about which I have told just now. And this voluntary sector, that is civil society organizations, call them non-governmental organizations, call them community-based organizations, they are very, very important, and more important for the reason that these are the organizations which are supposed to bring about some kind of change, socio-economic transformation, where the gap between rich and poor is less, where those millions and millions of people who are suffering a great deal, they are supported, they are looked after. This is the job of the voluntary sector. The voluntary organizations are supposed to do it. And when you talk of voluntary organizations, let me clarify another position, that there is something called social sector. The social sectors and the voluntary sector, they interface. In the government parlance, or maybe in the parlance of common developmental process, the social sector is represented by or represents the children who are deprived, the children, the women, the elderly, the disabled, and these kind of people. These different segments of society who need our support, for whom the voluntary sector also operates across the country. On the other side, thematically, we talk about health, we talk about education, we talk about poverty alleviation, we talk about environment. These are the various areas in which the government has a very, very important role to play. I mean, the government's role in the social sectors and the voluntary organizations' role in the social sector, they coalesce. They have the same ground to operate. And that is where I say that the value of the voluntary organizations is really such that it can't be exaggerated, and it has to be a partnership. And the partnership between the government, the market economy or the corporate or the business houses and the voluntary organization is extremely important. I wish India's political masters, or those who are in the politics and in the business of being the representatives of the country at different levels, they also had the sensitivity to understand what is their role in the social sector, what is their role as voluntary sector also. There is no contradiction between, let's say, the police operating on the one side or the government officials operating in a democratic system, or the politicians operating on the different side who also happen to be for the people, by the people, of the people, and the voluntary organizations which are supposed to be part and parcel of the civil society organizations and systems. They also operate on the ground for the people. So these are basically, kind of situations which may appear to be a little chaotic because this country is so chaotic, so complex. But ultimately, we are talking about this vast country, this powerful country, this country with huge multiplicity, this country with huge pluralism, this country with any number of castes and classes and religions and communities all living together, working together. So broadly speaking, all these situations are extremely important. And I would like to point out further that India's constitution is the real document. In fact, behind me, there is a constitution here. And India's constitution is so important, and it's becoming more and more important because it gives in the preamble, it's a sovereign, democratic, secular, socialist society, or maybe the country that we try to create. Each one is loaded expression. And perhaps India's constitution gives us an opportunity to understand the future. It's a dream document and I really admire it. So friends, whether you are in the government or you happen to be in voluntary sector or you happen to be a policeman like me or maybe some official who has to do the law enforcement, which is again meant for the people only ultimately, our task is same. And the task is to make the society better, to make India a better country. a more holistic, a more friendly, a more unified, a more powerful, and more successful country. I'm not giving a message to you. I'm only articulating what I think and the life I have led. Thank you.
We would like to thank our esteemed speakers for making time for us and our beloved audience. We would also like to extend our gratitude to our institution IMT Ghaziabad and our director Dr. Vishal Talwar for guiding us in hosting TEDxIMT Ghaziabad 2022 edition amidst the pandemic.
Last but not the least, we would like to thank our sponsors, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, Safe Express, Cremica, Plum Body Lovin', Barbecue Nation, Amar Ujala, without whom the event wouldn't have been possible.
This brings us to the end of this wonderful journey. We hope that we were able to make this special evening both enlightening and memorable for all of you. Lumos Nox, Light and Darkness. This is Muskan
and Indrajot
signing off until next time. Thank you once again and have a good night.